Hey there, friends. My name's Popeye. We had some more Uminkeo Chapter 2 for you tonight. Before we get into what happened last time, this game has some pretty mature themes, so I want to give everyone some trigger warnings. This game includes themes including but not limited to death, murder, mutilation, torture, child abuse, any of the above against a minor. If that's not something for you to do today, please by all means find a place that you feel more comfortable. Last time, we started with looking at the case of the 6 murdered inside the chapel, and Battler and Beatrice, who wants us to call her Beato now, had a conversation just like this, where we're kind of outside what's happening live at this moment. And they have what they're calling chess matches, which is essentially a form of debate. And Beatrice introduces this concept of speaking in red words, which is something that she can do. And if she speaks something in red, it means we are to take it unequivocally as the truth. And if she declines to do so, then we can consider it our point, more or less. So in the first case, if you want to see the result, I do have in Discord a new channel that that writes down the premise, what all the truths Beatrice said was, and then what the final conclusion is. So I won't spoil it in case people want to go back and take a look at that. But I think we're just about to get into the second chess match right here, which is the murders of Jessica and Cannon. And this will be interesting because we saw for a fact that they die because Beatrice appears and they have a fight with some demons and get stabbed. And what makes this more interesting is that Beatrice has disappeared Cannon's body as kind of a way to be like, see, I can just do special stuff. So kind of the information we have right now is, well, it was a locked room. Jessica was inside, the room was locked. Any of the servants' keys could have opened this door, as well as Jessica's key. Jessica's key was found inside the room, and Cannon is not there. However, Cannon's key was found on Jessica, as she had asked for it to open their master keys, by the way. I don't think I said that. Their master keys, and she'd asked for the master key. I believe it was to open Beatrice's room when she wanted to go and try to beat her up. Other than that, we know that Shannon and Goda were with grandfather at the time, so they have alibis, which leaves the other servants. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we'll see what happens from here. And hello, Sam says, how's it going? I know it's pretty late for you, so I don't blame you if you gotta hop off at some point before this ends. Okay, looks like we're getting right into this case. Okay, and I'm taking notes of all this to put in the Discord later, so no hidden doors. Okay. Door is the only way in or out. Okay. And so that also means we don't need to ask about windows or whatever other nonsense there might be. And like I said, the only way to lock it is with Jessica's key or one of the master keys. Each servant has one. Okay. So we have the servant, master keys plus Jessica's, window, locks from inside.
いきなりチェス盤をひっくり返させてもらうぜ。多分扉がどうこう、施錠がどうこうって論法から入るのはお前の手のひらから出ない。
Are you gonna solve cases with this cat?
好きにするがよい。さてさて、何を復唱すればよいのやら。
復唱要求。カノン君はこの部屋で殺された。
うん。カノンはこの部屋で殺された。
And you heard that drop. So until that point, Cannon was just missing. But this is now verified that even though we don't have his corpse, Cannon is dead.
Cannon
続けて復唱要求。カノン君の死体はこの部屋にある。
拒否する。復唱はできぬ。なぜなら死体はわらわが魔法で消したからだ。
そりゃ言わねえよな。そこにどうせ秘密があるに決まってるんだ。くそ、謎の論点はどこなんだ。マスターキーもなく施錠したことなのか、施錠された室内にいる二人をどうやって殺したかなのか、それとも二人を殺しどうやって脱出したかなのか。悔しいが外堀から埋めてくしかないぜ。復唱要求。最後の施錠はマスターキーによるものである。
これも拒否する。
その拒否ってやつがどうも曖昧だな。復唱不能だから拒否なのか、本当は復唱できるのにわざと拒否してるのかがわからん。
礼拝堂の鍵の時はそなたにすっかり逆手に取られてしまった。わらわが有利なうちはわざわざリスクのある赤を使って発言する必要がない。
Come here, Bobby. Can't have you down there. Okay, cat has been pulled out of where the cat should not have been.
ただそれだけのことよ。
そうなんだよな。本来赤ってのは俺の陳説をあんたが封じるときに使うもんだったんだよな。
わらわが有利になるように使うのは当然のこと。上げ足を取られるリスクが分かっている以上無駄には使わぬ。さて次はどういう手で来る？ゴーダや熊沢を疑う手がおそらく一番使いやすいぞ。
くそ、誘導されているようでムカつくぜ。しばらく黙ってろ。
もちろんこの扉は礼拝堂の時と同じ。施錠時にはいかなる方法をもってしても出入りはできぬ。
When door locked, no way to enter or exit. So she's basically saying it's not a trick door.
さらに言うと部屋の外から鍵を使わずに施錠するようなからくりも通用せぬぞ。
Okay, I think what she's saying right now is going to be pretty standard for what we're doing. So no trick to lock from outside without key. Two things to note here. She says there's no way of doing it from the outside, so you could do it from the inside, and one without a key.
頼まれてねえ時にばかり赤を乱発しや。
Let's back up. Let me just think. I'll lay out everything I know. First, there are two victims. Jessica and Canon-kun. Canon-kun's corpse isn't here, but Beatrice admitted and read that Canon-kun was killed. So even without a corpse, he's included as a victim, and specifically she said he was killed in this room. There are a few questionable points. Depending on which I focus on, my line of thought changes a lot. First, after the culprit committed murder in this room, how did they lock it? We assume the culprit was one of those holding a master key. It's extremely simple. I want to avoid that if I can. So I'd have to suspect Goda-san or Kumasawa-san. No, in the worst case, even Shen and Genji. At this point, I notice something. I'm contradicting myself. I'm cutting my own throat. I want to deny Beatrice no matter what. I want to erase the existence of that brutal, fickle, ridiculous witch. In order to do that, I have to explain everything with humans, not magic. That also means suspecting some human. I don't want to suspect someone. Of course, if there was some clear proof, I would have to believe that person was the culprit. But as long as that didn't happen, I didn't want to cast any suspicions. Am I just green? Am I just a kid who doesn't want to have my feelings, which tell me that at least this person or that person couldn't be a murderer or betrayed? I want to deny that it was a witch. I also want to deny that it was a human. Now I don't know what is what anymore.
そもそもそなたとわらわのゲームはわらわの存在を否定できるかどうかだけがそれだけでもそなたに不利なゲームなのにそなたは勝手に勝利条件を増やし
It's just as she says. If I started arguing that someone holding a master key was the culprit, this locked room could easily be broken. However, since the number of keys that could open this door are limited, furthermore, it's clearly known who holds them. Saying that would mean that I was suspecting someone I knew well. No, have I just been averting my eyes? In that locked room trick with the chapel, which had been exhilarating to destroy, I proposed that someone stole the key from Maria's handbag and returned it. If that theory is right, then the question becomes who could have stolen the key from her handbag? Maria's handbag had probably been at its most unguarded when she was sleeping. In that case, in addition to me, George Aniki and Jessica are also suspects. George Aniki or Jessica was the culprit? Or maybe an accomplice? All of our parents have been killed, right? And yet one of us consented to that and assisted with the crime? We had lamented, mourned, and shed tears in the chapel. And yet one among us had been lying.
そなたの例の手下げから抜き出し戻したという説はいとこたちを色濃く疑うものであったのだぞ。にもかかわらずそれに気づかないふりをしてよくもあれだけの説をシャーシャーとのたまえたものよ。
くそ、だからって親族や使用人の誰かが犯人だって保証はねえ。お前が例えば段ボール箱にでも隠れながらコソコソと近づいてきて。
I think we found the Solid Snake reference, Samus.
熟睡してる俺たちの部屋に忍び込んで鍵を奪った可能性だって十分あるじゃねえか。
それについてはそれでもよかろう。19人目の来客であるわらわを疑うことで彼らに疑いをかけずに済む。ならばジェシカの部屋の施錠はどうする？
See, first of all, I've never played a Metal Gear Solid game. So I just thought they didn't have a name, they're just the Colonel.
わらわは魔法で鍵を開けることは造作もないが、さすがにマスターキーは持たぬ。わらわの魔法を否定するならば、 わらわを疑うことも否定せねばなら
It's a
ん。
name.
そしてそれはつまり、そなたら18人の中の誰かを疑うことよ。
親切にありがとうよ。少し整理できたぜ。俺にとっての目的は、人間である19人目の来客、ベアトリーチェがどうやって犯行に及んだかに迫ることだ。そうすれば、誰も疑わずに済む。
それができればな。愚かな男。こんな部屋、本来は密室でも何でもない。何しろ開けることのできる鍵は合計で6
I
本
saw
も
on
あ
a
るのだ
forum
からな。
earlier today that apparently there are more Metal Gear Solid references.
そしてそれらの所有者は何人もいる。誰でも疑える。
Good boy, Cheerio.
疑い放題よ。なのにお前はわざわざそれらを全て否定し、自分で密室を作ってしまった。わかるか？これはお前の思考的矛盾が生み出した密室なのよ。他の誰でもない、そなた自身が。
魔女が魔法で開けたことを認めるか、俺の知る誰かが犯人であることを認めるかの二択だって言いたいんだな。くそ、大手飛車取りのつもりかよ。
こういう指し手もあると披露したかったまで。さてどうする後ろ宮バートラー。実に簡単な話じゃないか。あの自意識過剰な料理男と死に損ないのクソババアをちょいと生贄に仕立て上げるだけじゃない。
くそ、幸田さんと熊沢さんを疑えばそれでいいのか。ダメだ。俺はゴーダス熊沢さんが犯人だとは思えない。だがお前は認めない。絶対だ。
ならば魔法もマスターキーも使わずにこの部屋に入り、ジェシカとカノンを殺し、しかもカノンの死体を魔法を使わずに消失させねばならない。どうやって行う？わらわを否定しつつ誰も疑わずにどうやって行うのか。
リザインだ。
バトラ君、今なんて。
Okay, so Battler has given up on this chessboard.
降参だよ。俺はカノン君にこの扉が施錠できないことは証明できた。だからといってジェシカを誰が殺したのかを特定できたわけじゃない。
So it looks like this is going to be a puzzle we come back to in a later game.
いえ、十分です。
Well, there you go. You saw the ending of the chess match.
そのカノン君のためにありがとうございます。
礼なんかいらねえ。それはつまりシャノンちゃんを疑ってるってことなんだからよ。ローザおばさんもごめん、別に反抗したかったわけじゃない。俺も死にたくないし、親父たちの本当の敵を見つけ出したい。協調性のないことを言って悪かったぜ。
私も少し軽率だったわ。仲直りしましょう。おばとおい同士仲良くしないとね。
Auntie Rosa shifted the gun to one hand and held out her other hand. I reached out, and for the time being we shook hands. Auntie's gaze was sharp. In order to deny the witch, she would make anyone a sacrifice. That's what her eyes told me. And me? I denied the witch, but I wasn't prepared to lose anything. I was probably the one who thought himself the most ready to fight, and the one standing furthest from the truth. Bump ahead 5 hours. With Jessica's death, it became certain that the culprit was hiding somewhere nearby, and they would come after our lives if they had a chance. According to Genji-san, tomorrow morning comes, the boat should arrive. And the boat has a radio too. We'll probably be able to contact the police immediately with that. We all gathered in the parlor and decided to wait quietly until tomorrow. I proposed that we should search throughout the mansion for clues about the culprit. Auntie Rosa rejected that, saying if we put pressure on the culprit or provoke them, it might lead to a third murder. I think you mean third series of murders, because 8 people are currently dead. And that was probably the right thing to do. Even if a bunch of amateurs like us investigated, there's no way we find anything. It would be wisest to focus on protecting ourselves without doing anything unnecessary and leave it to the police after tomorrow. We'd been tense in the beginning, but other than Auntie Rosa, most of us had spent the morning watching TV and were getting bored. Our sense of danger had grown much less intense. When we thought about it, even though there were certainly been 6 adults killed at once in the first murder, that made us imagine that some backhanded method like poison had been used. And in the second murder, it was thought that the 2 had become sacrifices because they were unfortunately isolated from the rest of us. From this, we imagined that there weren't a great number of culprits. They didn't have the ability to kill this large group gathered in the parlor all at once. Right now in this parlor, there was George, Anakin, me, Maria, Auntie Rosa, Genji-san, Goto-san, Shannon-san, Kumasawa-san, and finally Dr. Nanjo. A total of 9 people were here. Furthermore, Auntie Rosa was even armed with a gun. Surely with this many people staying in this room, they wouldn't be able to touch us easily. That feeling of security, along with the passage of time, allowed us to recover from the shock of that morning bit by bit. Incidentally, lunch time had just ended for us. However, it had been canned food lunch, a far cry from last night's dinner, which Goto-san had skillfully made for us. Auntie Rosa, too, had suspected that poison had been used in the murder of those 6 people. So we probably couldn't deny the possibility that the culprit had snuck into the kitchen during all that confusion in the morning and mixed poison with the ingredients there. Auntie Rosa had ordered us all not to put anything into our mouths except safe food like canned food until the police came. As a cook, Goto-san must have felt very let down. So he wanted to display his skill anyway, he said that he at least wanted to bring the plates and pile them up with canned food. And Goto-san's chef's pick canned food combo lunch had become a reality. Goto-san had said something about taste being savored not just with the tongue but with the eyes too. I found myself agreeing. It had been the same canned food we ate for breakfast, but it felt like something completely different. So sitting lazily on a sofa with no desire to watch TV, Maria came over, pulled a picture book out of her handbag, and held it out to me as she said that.
なんだよ、その本。狼と羊のどれどれ
Wolves and sheep puzzle. Phrase that Auntie Rosa had said this morning when we had gone to call on Jessica. At the time, I hadn't known what it meant. And then after that, there was the uproar when Jessica's body was found, so I'd forgotten about it completely. The book that Marie held out looked like a foreign picture book or something that had been translated. Opening it, I could tell that the book contained an assortment of puzzles.
何匹かの狼と羊をね、1台のボートを使って対岸まで連れてくパズルなの。
ああ、そんなルールのゲームを聞いたことあるな。これはそれの狼と羊バージョンなのか。
It was a very simple puzzle passed on from long ago. Let's try one of the problems. On the right bank, there are 2 wolves and 2 sheep. There is a boat that as many as 2 animals can ride on, and using it, you have to move all 4 of them to the opposite left bank. There are 2 rules. The first is regarding the boat. It can be paddled by wolves or sheep, and even just 1 animal on its own, but it can only hold up to 2. The second is regarding the wolves. When they are greater in number than the sheep in that location, they attack the sheep and it's game over. For example, at the start of the game, both sheep ride the boat and go to the other side. Then 1 sheep gets off and goes back to the first bank. When it does, there are 2 wolves on the first bank and a single sheep returns there. When that happens, there are more wolves, so the sheep is attacked and it's game over. On either bank, or even... There must not be more wolves than sheep. It's puzzle about how to shuttle them across the boat under these conditions. By the way, the right answer is on the first turn, move both wolves to the opposite bank. Then 1 wolf comes back. On the second turn, move 2 sheep to the opposite bank. Then 1 wolf comes back. And on the third turn, that last wolf on the right bank on the boat and across to the opposite bank. Congratulations, transport successful. Partway, there may be the same number of wolves and sheep in the boat or on either side. That isn't a problem. You only lose when the number of wolves is greater. The book symbolizes it using wolves and sheep. There are probably lots of people who know the same game with a different symbolism. Looked like Marie wanted to test whether I could solve the puzzle she knew how to solve. She kept showing me different pages saying, solve this one, and this one's hard. It had been happening when Auntie Rosa had said the name of the puzzle. That's right. When we decided to go call Jessica, we had been talking about how many men should go. Auntie Rosa mentioned the wolf and sheep puzzle and said we should all go together. This could only mean one thing. Auntie Rosa was saying that there are wolves among us. When the number of wolves and sheep is balanced, we're safe, but when a situation comes up where that isn't the case, the wolves will bare their fangs. Is that what she's thinking? At the time we found our parents' corpses, Auntie Rose was already suspecting that the servants might be wolves. Well, she didn't know whether it was all of them or just one. She'd sniffed out the possibility that wolves were hiding among them. Well, yeah. The murder scene was pretty damn elaborate. It's easy to imagine that there were multiple culprits. Considering that she had that idea already in mind when we went to Jessica's room, where Jessica had been alone with the servant Cannon and had been killed. It wasn't hard to imagine why Auntie Rose had suspected the servant so persistently.
使用人の皆さん、合田さんが食器を洗いに厨房に戻ります。念のためです。皆さんも同行してください。
皆さん、申し訳ありません。団体行動で参りましょう。
シャノン、熊沢、行くぞ。
はいはい、ただいま。
それではジョージさん、一度失礼いたします。
うん、気をつけて。あ、ローザおばさん、僕も一緒に行っていいかな。
ごめんなさい。ジョージ君は残ってくれるかしら。ちょっとお話ししたいことがあるの。
そうですか。シャノン、とにかく気をつけて一人にならないでね。
はい。
南條先生、ちょっとご相談が。
はい、何ですかな。
The servants put the dishes and empty cans on the serving cart and started to head out into the corridor. Behind them, Auntie Rose was talking to Dr. Nanja about something in a small voice.
参りましょう。
ええ、よろしくお願いします。
Dr. Nanja closed the book he'd been reading, stood from the sofa, and followed after the servants. Auntie Rosa stuck her head into the hallway, and after watching them leave completely, she closed the door and spoke.
みんな聞いて、これで今ここにいるのは後ろ宮の人間だ。
ん？確かにそうなりますね。
狼を全部追い出したってことっすか、ローザおばさん。
That one sentence, Auntie Rosa's gaze grew sharp. Apparently she'd picked up on my sardonic tone. Auntie Rosa laughed lightly.
バトラ君は頭の回転が速いのね。賢い子は好きよ。話が早いよ。
おお、バトラー頭いい？これ解ける？ 64ページの難しいの。
マリアは少しの間テレビを見ていなさい。ママはバトラ君たちとお話があるの。
Okay, so let's look at. So if you look at this, well, I guess Kinzo's still not with us. So there's the four of us. There's Kinzo. Beatrice, we don't know where she is. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 non-Ushiromiyas and 5 Ushiromiyas. So if you're looking at it from a wolf and sheep, the wolves already outnumber the sheep. And in fact, in that previous bit, assuming all 5 of them are wolves, they outnumbered the sheep in that case.
ローザおばさん、パズルの話はバトラ君に聞いたよ。用心深いのは悪いことじゃないと思うけど、さすがに疑り深すぎるのもどうかと思うよ。
真の犯人がベアトリーチェかどうかは別にして、少なくとも使用人たちがその一味であることを疑うことはできると思うの。兄さんたちが殺されていた最初の殺人、とても残酷な仕打ちがされていたわよね。あれが一人でできる真似に見える。
謎の来客ベアトリーチェ様が夜鍋をしてチクチクやったのかもしれねえぜ。
ジェシカちゃんの部屋の扉をめぐるマスターキーの件は使用人の誰かが関わっている証拠じゃない。
Only a master key could have locked the door to Jessica's room. In that case, we can only suppose that one of the servants locked it. No way.
チェス盤をひっくり返すぜ。おかしいよ。なんで犯人はジェシカを殺した後わざわざ施錠したんだ。施錠すればマスターキーの持ち主が疑われるのは必然。わざわざ施錠する必要がないぜ。
そうだよ。バトラ君の言う通りだ。わざわざ疑われるようなことをする理由がない。
それは面白い考えよね。もちろん私もそれは考えた。だとしたら施錠した人物は使用人を疑わせたくてマスターキーなしであの扉を閉めた。でもそれは不可能でしょ。
That's right. It was a trick that could lock the door without a master key. This would be a good disguise aimed at casting doubt on the servants. The culprit wanted to isolate us and attack us one by one. This trick was a very effective one that could have given rise to paranoia. However, there was no way to lock the door without using a master key.
マスターキーを使わずに閉める方法がないなんてどうして言い切れるの？ルドルフ兄さんの言っていた悪魔の証明になるんじゃない？私たちには想像もつかない方法で閉められたのかもしれない。私たちに思いつかないからといって未知のトリックがあることを否定することにはならない。
So Rose is almost taking the place that Battler did in the previous round.
そりゃそうだけどよ。つまりあれか？疑わしきは黒ってわけなのか？
具体的なトリックはわからないけれど、それでも外角はわかるの。申し訳ないけど、カノン君を犯人だと仮定すると、非死体がない理由までね。
だって、カノン君はマスターキーを持ってなかったんですよ。他の使用人ならともかく、カノン君にだけは施錠はできなかったはず。
なるほど。それでローザおばさんは、ジェシカの部屋に入って早々に、俺たちにクローゼットなんかを探せと言い出したわけ。ローザおばさんこそ普段の様子から想像できるより
妹の頭の回転速度は常に姉マイナス1よ。今は誰にも気を使う必要がないからせいせいするわ。
Towards the end, he realized that she was referring to Auntie Eva. Seemed a little disturbed at how she could take that nasty, should take that nasty remark.
僕にも分かるように説明してほしいな。カノン君のマスターキーはジェシカちゃんのポケットに入って密室に閉じ込められていた。施錠した後に部屋の外からポケットに入れるなんて芸当は不可能なはず。
違うんだよ兄貴。ローザおばさんの想像しているやり方ならこのトリックはカノン君にしか使えない。そしてジェシカのポケットにマスターキーを入れたまま鍵なしで施錠することができる。そして その結果として、死体もなくなることになる。
どうやって、鍵なしで、どうやって施錠するんだい？
簡単よ。ジョージ君だって帰宅したら施錠するでしょ。つまみをひねって、カチリとね。
まさか。いや、でも、カノン君の姿はどこにも。
兄貴にもピンときたみてえだな。ローザおばさんが室内を探したのはそういうことだ。内側から鍵を閉め、ジェシカのポケットに鍵を突っ込んだカノン君が、どこかに隠れて、俺たちをやり過ごそうとしているのを探したんだ。
So remember what was in the red letters that Beatrice said? That the door, how is it she phrased it? No trick to lock the door from outside without a key. The simplest locked room trick. In other words, to hide inside the locked room after committing the murder. To get out after those who discovered the body left, it would create the perfect locked
私た
room
ちはあ
murder.
の部屋を探したけれど、でも、だからといって、あの部屋に使用人たちしか知らない秘密の隠し通路のようなものがないとは言えない。それがどこに隠されていたかはわからないけれど、その隠し通路を仮定し推理することで、彼しかありえないと断言できるの。
However, we already know from what Beatrice said that there is no secret passage.
その推理はよ、俺も一番最初に考えた。一番嫌な推理だから。一番最初にその可能性を潰したかった。
カノンはこの部屋で殺された。で、そなたはカノンが犯人であると疑いそうになったため、真っ先にその可能性を潰すために、これを復唱させたのだ。わかっておるわかっておる。
だから、その次に考えたのはこうだった。あの部屋にいたのは実は3人だったという説だ。ジェシカとカノン君は被害者。そして、犯人である来客ベアトリーチェも一緒にいた。
そなたは、人間であるわらわが、魔法を使わずに犯行を行ったことにしたいのだったな。なるほど。そなたにぴったりの陳説であるぞ。
お前は2人を殺し、内側から施錠した。そして、カノン君の死体を担いで、普通の人は気づかない秘密の方法、つまり、隠しと、しかし、お前に赤で言われちまった。あの部屋に隠し扉の類はないってな。
うん。お前たちの知らない秘密の通路は存在せぬぞ。ノックスだったかバンダインだったか。何でもミステリーには秘密の通路があってはいけないらしい。そのお作法にわらわも従ったということ。つまり名探偵は部屋を調べ尽くさずして隠し通路がないと断言できるわけだ。人間の推理ごっことはなんとお気楽なものよの。
くそ、でけえこと言いやがるぜ。ありがとよ、魔女様のお取り計らいのおかげで。俺も部屋を
10 p.m. on a Friday. Just push straight to master right now. It'll be fine, and then take off for a few days. Don't even see if it deploys properly. Just push directly to master, start the deployment, and log off.
うん。この部屋に隠し扉はない。扉と窓以外に出入りする方法はない。
今、ローザおばさんがぶってる自信満々の仮説は間違ってる。しかも悔しいことに、この仮説は反証不能だ。魔女のお前は赤で、隠し扉はないと断言すれば、それで決着する。
I once worked with a developer whose his version of deployment was he copied and pasted stuff to an AWS server that was just statically hosted.
しかし人間の俺は、ローザおばさんにそれを反論しても受け入れられないだろう。隠し扉がないことを人間
I
は
also
証明
declined
で
his
きない。
production server was lit for something oddly specific. It was literally the computer under my desk in the closet.
悪魔の証明人魔女ってのは便利だな。
そんなあるかないかもわからない隠し扉を理由にカノン君を犯人呼ばわりするなんて僕は納得できないな。
納得できないならより納得できる推理を聞かせて。ないのよ。私はずっと考えてる。これしかないのよ。ジョージ君はシャノンちゃんと仲が良かったわね。だから使用人全員が犯人であることは受け入れがたいと思うの。私もシャノンちゃんが犯人の一味であるなんて信じたくない。でも全員であるか否かはともかく確実にあの中に犯人もしくは共犯がいるのよ。
Hello, Beardy.
それだけは見誤っちゃダメ。
How's it going?
カノン君以外にも狼がいると見てたんだ。ジェシカの部屋で犯人はカノン君だと大騒ぎした。使用人たちの反応を見るため。
ええ、そうよ。そしてその結果私は一層の疑
Yeah,
い
because
を持
normally
つ。
I'm ending about this time.
確実に使用人の中に狼がいる。確実にね。そして狼と羊のパズルのように普段はおとなしくしているけれど、ジェシカちゃんは一人で船に乗った羊よ。あのパズルでは頭数の時は襲ってこないけど、チャンスと人数次第なら頭数でも襲ってくる。ジェシカちゃんが殺されたように。
僕は怒りたいことがある。じゃあ厨房へ行かされてるシャノンは危険な状態じゃないか。今すぐ僕たちも厨房へ行くべきだ。誰が狼だろうと狼でなかろうと僕たち全員が揃っていれば均衡するならそれを。
シャノンちゃんはお父様のところへ源氏さんと一緒に行って、その時に孤立したはずなのに殺されなかった。源氏さんも狼ではないから。違うわ、二人とも狼だったからよ。
シャノンは悪事の片棒を担ぐような人じゃない。いくらローザおばさんでもそれは聞き流せません。今の発言に対し僕は取り消しを要求します。
兄貴の前で悪いがエヴァおばさんの雰囲気にそっくりだな。こっちが反論できなきゃ自動的に自分が正しいみたいな。やっぱり血は争えないな。
私だって今の自分はあまり褒められたものじゃない。でもね、私は母なの。マリアの無事を守るためなら鬼にもなるわ。
I think you are already the demon for
本当
Maria's
なら
safety.
マリアと二人きりでどこかに閉じこもっていたいくらいよ。でも私は同時にあなたたちの母でもあるつもりなの。今やあなたたちは私の子供も同然。私は自分の子じゃないからといってあなたたちを見捨てたりしない。絶対。
そりゃどう。
私はあなたたちの母として油断しないでと警告
Also,
したか
isn't
っただ
George
けな
at
の。
this point like an adult? Like, isn't he like in his early 20s?
常に私の目の届くところにいて。
Well, let me catch you up on who's dead. Here's the map. So I think when you were here, I think that was before anyone died. So 8 people are dead now. Okay, well, it's now confirmed that Jessica and Cannon are dead.
私があなたたちを守ってあげる。
ついでに俺たちが狼でないことも監視してくれるってわけだ。そりゃありがたいぜ。そういうおばさんは自分が狼ではないって証明はできるのかよ。
ええ、できるわ。
即答っすね。どうやって？
I will be posting, so we did get through the second chess match the one with Jessica and Cannon. And I hate to say that Battler ends up resigning, so we don't actually know what happens to them, and I imagine this is going to be something that comes back in the future.
これよ。これが証拠よ。
Yes, we have no corpse for Cannon. However, following the rules of what Beatrice says, if she says something in red, it is true. So one thing that Battler asks is, was Cannon killed in this room? And Beatrice says yes, in red. So based on the rules of the game, we have a confirmation that Cannon was killed in the same room that Jessica's body was found in. That was only for an instant. She immediately lowered the gun, laughing impishly. To me, the time I spent staring down the barrel of the gun had felt like an eternity.
その銃がどうローザおばさんが犯人でないことを証明するというんですか？
考えてもみて、私が犯人だったらどう？使用人たちが出ていたこの千載一遇の機会を逃すと思う。あなたたちをズドンと撃って、あとは適当な言い訳をするだけよ。窓の外にベアトリーチェが現れて銃を撃ってきたとか、私は2発を撃ち返したと称して2発分の空薬莢を床に捨てればいい。
そりゃすげえ乱暴な理論だが、確かに一理あるぜ。
Sounds good.
クラウス兄さんが昔よく言ってたわ。力こそ正義ってね。これがまさにそうなのか。ごめんなさいね、二人とも。私も今朝からの事件続きでかなり。
I am also totally cool with people putting spoilered theories in the Uminkeo theory channel. Just outside of the spoilers, say which case it's for. So, for example, you could put outside of it Kinzo being murdered in his office, and then spoiler your whole piece. So I think at this point people should realize that basically everyone's going to die for the foreseeable future.
普段の私を知る二人から見れば、今の私は余裕がなくて少し短気そうに見えるかもしれない。でも分かってる。私は悪
It was
意あ
said
る
in
犯人
red,
から
furniture is
あ
dead.
なたたちを守り
Also
たい。
that rhymes, so it must be true.
そのためには鬼になる。それだけのことなの。
That's why the Lorax is so powerful.
怒らせるようなことを言ってごめんなさいね。バトラ君、ジョージ君、仲直りしましょう。
George Annick was wearing an unsatisfied expression. He probably couldn't forgive the damage done to Shannon's honor. What about me? Several bits of circumstantial evidence hint strongly at the servant's participation. I don't want to believe that one of them is the culprit, or possibly colluding with the culprit. But in the current situation, that's nothing but wishful thinking. Who should I believe? In the first place, who is the culprit? Are there accomplices? If so, how many? I feel like I'm constantly only suspecting the people connected to all this. I find myself quickly forgetting about the 19th person, the guest Beatrice who came yesterday and boldly called herself the Golden Witch. I haven't actually seen her face. I've heard she's like a double of the witch in that portrait. Because I haven't seen her directly, no matter how hard I try, I can't really feel like there are 19 people on this island. So I easily slip into the illusion that the culprit is one of the 18. I wonder if that's going to be an ongoing thing, that he never actually sees human Beatrice. Damn it. Come out, Beatrice. You're the bad guy, then act like the bad guy and show yourself, laughing in a high-pitched voice looking down on us. Just like a bad guy in one of those dramas who, even once they're exposed as the culprit, aggressively says, "Is there any proof?"
証拠は終わりかな。
うっせえ。てめえはしばらく黙ったろ。
I love how Beatrice literally paused time to be a dick. There were 5 humans in the kitchen, but it was very quiet, filled only with the sound of the rain. It's only accented by the sound of Shannon and Kumasawa washing the dishes. Goto was using the leftovers from breakfast and lunch as ingredients for a servant's soup. Rose had suspected the poison might have been added to the food, so they had decided to eat canned food, but it really hadn't been filling. Goto thought she was being too careful, so he was spontaneously creating a soup to be served only to those who wanted to eat it. Shannon and Kumasawa were washing the dishes that the food had been arranged on. On the inside, they thought that maybe Goto should be the one to wash them, since he had been the one who wanted the food on the plates in the first place. Genji and Nanda were facing each other across a crude chess house that seen many years. It had still only just begun, and was in the exact same format that it always appears in this picture. Because the opening game of the experienced players had been endlessly refined, it looked like a ritual. They moved specified pieces in a specified order.
良い匂いですね。やはり缶詰ではこうはいきませんね。
開封した食材だけで作りましたので、毒が混入しているなんてことはありませんよ。皆さんの分もお作りしていますので、ぜひ食べましょう。もちろん私もお毒にしますよ。安心して召し上がってください。
本当にいい匂いですね。合田さんのまかない料理は本当に美味しいです。
美味しい材料を買ってきて、美味しい料理が作れるのは当たり前です。私は師匠にあり合わせのもので美味しく作るまかない料理を極めてこそ
それはいい師匠でしたな。おかげで私はとても美味しいスープをご馳走になれそうです。
親族の皆様にお召し上がりいただくための材料で作ることになってしまったのは、
ローザさんも朝からのいろいろでお疲れなのでしょう。無理もないことです。
でもそのおかげで美味しい食材のスープが飲めるのですからね。
Rosa had fervently told everyone they didn't realize the danger they were in, and that they must suspect the poison was mixed in with the food. The atmosphere in that place had led to their agreement, that their hunger wouldn't be overcome by that momentary emotion.
皮肉にも普段の私たちではとても味わえないスープとなりました。できるなら客間の皆さんにもぜひ振る舞いたいところなのですが、
ローザ様のご指示に背いている以上、飲みたいものだけ飲むという。
見えないところで上手に息抜きするのも使用人の心得でございますものね。
Kumasawa laughed loudly, and Shannon and Goto laughed with her. It seemed that, in an area where only their fellow servants were gathered, they could be very relaxed. Shannon didn't like Goto's occasional dishonesty. She knew that there was no falsehood in his childish smile when he cooked, nor in his desire that people enjoy his food. So even though it was a little aggravating to be made to wash the dishes, she really couldn't hate him. Although she probably really should. However, they couldn't have dreamed that Rosa was calling them wolves in the parlor at exactly the same moment that they were spending their time peacefully like this. At that time, several of the servants heard a sound that sounded like something was being dragged, and then a thump. When the servant was out carrying a mountain of trash bags on a rainy day, or doing some work in a raincoat, that would create exactly that kind of noise and presence, and they returned and hovered around the back door. After hearing that sound at first, none of them noticed anything out of the ordinary. Hey, has anyone seen Grandpa recently? But they quickly realized, in a situation where everyone is either in the kitchen or the parlor, who in the world was at the back door? As the servants all looked at each other, they checked to make sure that each one of them knew what that sound meant. The servants knew the mansion's layout well. They understood how unimaginable it would be for someone from the parlor to actually go outside in this typhoon, go all the way around, and come up to this back door. Then was it Kinzo? They found it even more difficult to imagine that Kinzo, who had never left his study even under normal conditions, would dash out in the middle of the typhoon for no apparent reason, and come to the back of the house where only low-class people came in or out. Shannon and Kumasawa drew close together, fearfully looking at the back door.
どちら様ですか?
As Goda fearfully approached the back door, he called out, and checked with his eyes the location of a butcher's knife set on a nearby sink. He didn't pick it up yet, because there was still a possibility that this was a member of the family. However, that possibility wasn't possible. There was no response from across the door to Goda's initial question. Maybe his voice had been so quiet that it hadn't reached through all the wind and rain outside.
Genji-san.
南條先生と女たちは下がって。一体どなたなんですかな?
Genji took a knife with a classical design from a stationery box placed near the chess set. It was something to be used instead of a paper knife to open envelopes for invoices and bills. But it was fundamentally a knife. The blade on it could injure someone. Genji hid it in his sleeve with a well-practiced Should we be worried that he's well-practiced with hiding knives in his suit? Then he too approached the back door and signaled to Goda with a silent nod. Goda cautiously approached the back door and slowly started to open it. Figure of a person suddenly shuffled into sight, landed on its knees and fell over. Goda fell backward onto his backside in shock. That figure was soaked with rain, smeared with mud, and drenched with blood. We found Cannon. Just confirming. Okay, we don't have a corpse yet.
Canon? 大丈夫か? 南條先生.
It was Cannon. His breath was feeble, and the puddles of mud he left quickly became drenched bright red. When Nanjo held him and turned his face up, there was a deep, gruesome scar right in the center of his chest, as though he'd been run through with a spear or something. Yeah, so this calls into question, if he's still alive, then the witch said in red, he was killed in this room. That wasn't true. Even now, deep red poured out from there.
これはひどいですよ。どうしましょう。救急箱ですか。救急箱ですか。
This is true. This could also not be canon.
しっかり押さえてください。使用人室のベッドに運びましょう。皆さん、手を貸してください。
さあ、カノンさん。
For what it's worth, we have not seen Cannon's character model yet.
しばらく我慢してください。
しっかりして。もう大丈夫よ。だから傷口から手を離さないで。
とにかく使用人室へ運ぼう。熊沢ローザ様にカノンが見つかったことの報告を。
待って、ローザ様にはダメ。
待ってください。カノンさんがローザ様には
どういう意味なの？
今はいい。早く使用人室へ運ぼう。熊沢、ローザ様にはまだお伝えするな。カノンに事情を聞いてからにする。
After appearing in this horrible state, he had said not to tell Rosa. That could only mean something very disquieting. An eerie sense of panic rose to their faces.
さあ皆さん、急いで運びましょう。早く早く。
Cannon's wound was unbelievably deep, and judging from Nanjo's pale face, it's almost a miracle that he was still conscious.
ひどい。何か槍のようなもので刺されたようです。肺まで届いてなければなんとか持つかも。とにかく止血を。
No matter how much Nanjo tried to wipe off that gushing deep red blood, he couldn't wipe it. He couldn't wipe it. He couldn't wipe it all away. Each time the wound was aggravated, causing Canon to cry in anguish. Can we stop repeating things?
南條先生、火炎のタオルです。なんてむごい。
容体はどうですか？
本音を言うと、生きているのが信じられん深手だ。刺されどころが幸運だったのかもしれん。だが出血がひどすぎる。輸血が必要だが、明日まで無理だ。
ローザ様が僕たちを。喋らないで、カノン君。傷口が開いちゃう。ローザ様がやってきて、お嬢様と僕は。
なんですって。
ローザ様がですか。
I don't understand this part. Either one, what we saw with Canon fighting the demons didn't happen. Option 1. Option 2, this isn't that Canon. Option 3, something happened to Canon's memories between him fighting the demon and now.
そんなことって、そんな。
間違いないのか？
はい、間違いなく。
Hello, Xavier. How's it going?
さあ、もう喋らないで。熊沢さん、もう一つの救急箱を取ってください。
Thank you for the hydrate.
源氏さん。
And the stretch. You believe in demon canon? Okay. See, I feel like we have to believe in the red words. That we have to believe that Canon originally did die. Now, do we want to get technical and have like, oh, he was technically dead? You know, he was clinically dead for some period of time and has come back to life. But then that still doesn't explain his, like, Rosa came in and did blah, blah, blah. So that's the part that still gets me. So I feel like you could argue away the he's dead parts. As weird as that sounds, you can argue away the he's dead part. I don't think you can argue away the change between what he did and what he did with the demons and what apparently Rosa is saying that he did. Or sorry, he is saying that Rosa did. I had that reversed. But let's see if he is not dead enough to tell us what that is.
ローザ様がなんてことはあり得るのでしょうか。
わからん。
I'm also trying to think back to everyone's positions at that time. Like, is it physically possible that Rosa was there? Disregarding Nanjo and Kumasawa, who were struggling hard and stained with blood as they tried to stop the bleeding, Genji and Goda faced each other. Because if what Canon had said was the truth, Rosa was the culprit who killed Jessica.
ローザめ、よくもお嬢様を殺してやる。
Canon screamed even more hatefully. His hate-filled voice made it seem like he'd seen Jessica being harmed right before his eyes.
確かにローザ様がお嬢様を殺す理由はあるかもしれない。後ろ宮家が全滅すれば遺産は全てローザ様のもの。だとしたらバトラー様やジョージ様も危険なのでは。 ローザ様は銃を持っている上に、今客間には彼らしかいない。源氏さん、これはかなりまずいことでは。
Shannon suddenly ran out to the corridor. Her expression was complex and tragic, as though she didn't know what to believe. Shannon ran. To where? The inside of the mansion had been scrupulously cleaned, and they probably wouldn't be easy to find. She might find some if she searched the rose garden. They would probably have all been lost in this wind and rain. That's right, the boiler room isn't cleaned very often. If she went there, she might be able to find some. Shannon ran down the stairs to search for those in the underground boiler room. Had some medicine taken effect at the brink of death, or had Cannon finally stopped even feeling pain? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Shannon's looking for shurikens. For the time being, Cannon had at least gotten over his painful gasping. Nanjo apparently didn't think of this as that great of a trend, and didn't let his eyes off Cannon for a second. Kumasawa firmly gripped Cannon's hand and kept encouraging him so that his will to stay alive didn't fall asleep. Genshin Goda seemed bewildered at how to deal with the truth that Cannon had risked his life to deliver.
ローザ様の銃は確か4発か5発の弾が込められたはずだ。
決して少ない数ではないですね。でもあの銃は弾の装填に結構な慣れが必要だったはず。一発目は撃たせてしまうかもしれませんが、みんなで襲いかかれば次を撃たせずに銃を奪い取れるかも。
この島には医者はいても薬はなく、病院もない。撃たれどころが悪ければ死ぬぞ。
それは分かっていますが、それより早く行動を起こさないとまた次の事件が起こる可能性を。私たちはローザ様にうまく追い出された気がします。今頃ジョージ様やバトロ様が殺されている可能性も。
Maria's also in that room. I guess they figured she wouldn't be killing her own daughter.
そんな危険な相手なら無理に刺激しない方がいいんじゃありませんか。
しかし明日までは長い。どんな手を打ってくるか想像もつきませんよ。源氏さん、こちらから仕掛けるべきです。せめて銃さえ理由をこじつけて奪えばなんとかなるかも。
弾は 4,5 発じゃありませんか。ということは私たち全員を殺すには足りないということです。迂闊に刺激しなければきっとローザ様もむやみには。
あいつは言ったよ。
I see theories are being posted.
僕たちを皆殺しにすると言った。
I wonder if Cannon, in his, blood-lost delusion, saw Beatrice as Rosa, or Beatrice used magic to appear as Rosa to him? Cannon, who they thought had been sleeping quietly, suddenly started talking brightly, almost like he'd been awake the whole time and had suddenly opened his mouth. He looked firm and steady, and Nanjo was slightly relieved, but thinking of the deepness of that wound, he couldn't just wipe away a certain creepy feeling. He knew because he was a doctor. Cannon should have been expected to fall unconscious after losing so much blood, yet somehow he had preserved his awareness so clearly. Youth? Tenacity? Sometimes the power of human life did surpass common knowledge. When they stopped the bleeding to make sure there was no foreign objects inside the affected area, Nanjo groped around a bit inside the bleeding hole of tweezers, and the great depth of the wound had surprised him. The wound had certainly reached as far as his lungs. Yet, now on the other hand, the fact that he is alive is fortunate. But Cannon had spoken clearly. He had hatefully said the one named Rose had created this wound, and was repeating curses and enraged words.
あいつは親方様の財産を独り占めする。
I think Demon Cannon theory might be
どんな手
right.
を使ってでも皆殺しにする気なんだ。
Also, for what it's worth, Canon still listed as dead. What does that say? His corpse is... his death is incontrovertible.
あいつはそうするとはっきり僕に言ったよ。
くそ。
I mean, they're currently red. What color are they normally? I mean, everyone here seems to have either brown or blue eyes. I don't remember off the top of my head. Actually, doesn't he have like silver eyes?
なんて人だ。源氏さん、どうしましょう。私たちにも何か武器がいるのでは。
They're definitely not red, I can tell you that.
にわかには信じられん。ローザ様がそのようなことを。
源氏様、信じる信じないじゃない。あいつが僕に、この僕が聞いて、どうして信じてくれないんですか。
起きないで傷に触ります。
Cannon sat up on the bed and spoke to Genji, who was making no effort to believe Cannon's story.
あいつは僕たちを必ず全員殺す。もうきっと客間の方々も殺されているに違いありません。僕らが先に殺さなければ必ず僕らが先に殺される。僕が先に殺されたようにみんなも先に殺される。殺さなきゃ殺される。
Welcome back to Demon Cannon.
殺さなきゃ殺される。殺さなきゃ殺される。
カノンさん、あんた本当に痛くないのか。
ああ、これですか。大した傷じゃありません。
大した傷じゃないどころか、あんたは。
He's got glowing red eyes now. Let's see if it cuts back.
こんなのもう全然痛くないし、本当に大した傷じゃない。
As Cannon said that, he began to untie his own bandages, which had been painstakingly wrapped. The gruesome hole in his chest was immediately exposed.
カノンさん、そんなことをしてはダメですよ。早く横になって。
大丈夫ですって。ほら、ね、大した傷じゃないでしょ。
Cannon showed off his gaping wound, which was still slowly spitting out foamy blood. Everyone averted their eyes reflexively.
ほら、全然大した傷じゃないで。
やめなさい。傷をいじってはいけません。
ほら、全然深い傷じゃない。
I think the implication here is that he's got his hand inside the wound, being like, see, it's not that deep. I can only fit my whole hand inside of it. Yeah. Just extra gory, trigger warning. Cannon held up two fingers, showed them to everyone, and slowly started to stick them into the gruesome wound right in the center of his chest. Plunging, slimy, squishy, wet. The fingers went in deep to the base. Squish, glope, blorp.
カノンさん、やめて、やめて。
Having stuck his fingers completely into his chest up to their base. Up to their base. So he stuck two fingers. I'm going to presume it's middle and index. So that makes, I think, the most sense. I mean, my finger at a quick measure, that would be about 3 inches. Imagine sticking something 3 inches into your chest. For me, that's going either like into my heart or into a lung, if not both. The fingers he pulled out were stained a sticky, solid, deep red color, and there was even a thread hanging. Thank you for the quote. Fingers were all the way to their base, covered in deep red.
あんた、痛い。
ね、 全然大した傷じゃ。
Just then the door opened vigorously and Shannon appeared. Even after she saw Cannon stained with fresh blood, her impregnable expression didn't falter.
どこへ行っていたの？僕が既得だというのに。一体どこへ？
Thank you.
ボイラー室に行ってきた。探し物があって、それより確かめたいの。あなたは本当に。
Okay, here we go. It was only natural. Everyone believed he was Cannon. They couldn't understand the meaning of Shannon's question. When they looked, they noticed Shannon was holding a handkerchief in her hand. It was filthy and looked like she'd wiped up some trash or dust. While holding that, she approached Cannon and drew close to his legs.
なんだい？
蜘蛛の巣を拭き取ったハンカチよ。
なんでそんなもの？
カノン君なら平気だろうけど、もしあなたにとって蜘蛛が天敵だったなら嫌うかなって思って。
Spiders are your natural enemy? Oh, if he's like made of butterflies? Or are demons afraid of spiders? And did we just figure out a way to keep Satan away from us?
やだな。
If so, my house might not burn down this Christmas.
僕がどうして雲を嫌うの？
ごめん、試すの。
When Shannon brought the handkerchief close to Cannon's thigh, something happened in an instant. It happened all at once. The human eye couldn't have followed it. Cannon jumped back like a wild goat, fleeing from the thing Shannon was holding. His arm drew trails with some kind of afterglow that flashed purple. There were 3 beautiful purple trails drawn in an arc, and they were traced across the throats of Nanjo and Kumasawa, who had been tending to him. And Nanjo and Kumasawa's throats had opened like gaping mouths, and it was the very instant before the blood was about to start spewing out. The 3rd purple trail should have traced across Shannon's throat, but Shannon wasn't there. His Genji, who'd been behind her, had wrapped his own arm around Shannon's neck and pulled her back. This all happened in an instant. The instant Goda tried to think fast in an attempt to understand the scene, the frozen moment in time shattered. Blood spewed forcefully from Nanjo and Kumasawa's necks, which had been torn open. Still mid-jump, Cannon wall-kicked off a picture frame that had been hanging from the wall behind him, springing forward just like a cat and aiming for Shannon's throat again. Yeah, if only they had a doctor. Oh well. But Cannon's target once again disappeared from in front of him, because Genji had pulled Shannon again. The 2 of them had fallen onto the ground, keeping flat to the floor.
いい反射神経だ。この老いぼれ客が。
Do we have dead people now? Okay, they're not dead yet. Goda wasn't an idiot either. Even if he fully couldn't understand what was going on, he at least realized that if this cannon wasn't seized, his own life would also be in peril. He sprung at Cannon with his huge body, pushing him up against the wall with his weight and physical strength. The tips of the fingers on Cannon's right hand began to trace out another purple trail. When he raised the blade hand up, aiming to strike at Goda's back, there was a loud thunk. His Cannon's raised blade hand had been pinned to the wall. He couldn't tear his palm away from the wall. Sticking out from it was the knife Genji had thrown. Oh yeah, he had that one up his sleeve. Under normal circumstances, he should have been surprising to see someone as old as Genji handle a knife so skillfully. In this abnormal space, no one paid it much mind. Genji took the handkerchief with the spider web stuck to it from Shannon. He approached Cannon, who was pinned to the wall by Goda's massive body and the knife. I think he's fine. When Genji pushed the handkerchief up against Cannon's face, there was a sound just like the one you hear when you set meat on a red-hot iron plate. Of course, the smell was the same too, as he was burned and inflamed, festering and filthy red and black, and cried out in his death throes. Cannon's body burst open and scattered. It was as though a balloon filled with gold leaf had popped. The entire servant room was completely buried under a storm of gold leaf. No, a rabble of gold butterflies. Those butterflies began to softly fade into nothingness as though dissolving into water. No, into the air itself. Afterwards, all that was left was the three of them sitting on their behinds, stained with blood. However, not everyone was just as stained with blood. Some of them were lying on the ground, vomiting blood themselves.
Kumasawa, Nanjo sensei.
A slit so sharp it looked like you could cut your finger if you touched it was wide open, causing large amounts of blood to keep pouring out. It seems Beatrice was honest and then tried to trick everyone. And somehow Shannon knows that if you stick a cobweb on a butterfly person, that they die. Hi, Cat. Hi, Bubby. Buddha looked at his own hand. The bright red blood left from the scuffle with Cannon definitely remained. Hi, Mauka. Meowka. Yet Cannon was nowhere to be seen because he had disappeared. He had turned into gold butterflies and scattered. Buddha kept screaming alone that he had no clue about what was going on. I heard a thing. Okay, they're now officially dead. Shannon sobbed in front of Nanjo and Kumasawa's remains, and Genji watched over her, silent as always. Right, Cat? Yeah. So all that took place in 17 minutes.
南條先生と熊沢さんが一体どういうことなの？
ああ、シャノン、無事でよかった。君に何かあったら僕は。
庄司様。
ジョージ君、少し静かにして。あなたたちの目の前で殺人が行われたんでしょ。犯人を見たの？見ないの？
それが何と説明すればいいのか。源氏さん。
私たちに見たものをうまく説明できません。
確かにそれは私たちの目の前で起こりました。私の目の前にいた。だけれどあれは何だったんだ。私にもわからないんです。
何を言ってるの？あなたが出会ったのは昨夜から所在不明の魔女ベアトリーチェか、行方不明、男か女か、それだけでも答えられるでしょ。
ローザおばちゃん、少し落ち着けって。目の前で2人やられりゃ誰だって混乱だってする。
The butterflies got them. Butterfly wings are really sharp, right?
焦らなくていいぜ。何があったのか順を追って話してくれ。
それが何を私。
Dr. Nanjo and Kumasawa had been killed. We understood that much. It seemed that it had occurred in front of their eyes, but even so they spoke awkwardly. They admitted that they definitely seen the crime with their own two eyes. But when asked to explain what they had seen, their mouths went suddenly shut. I could understand why Auntie Rose was irritated and losing her patience.
シャノン、君は見たのか？南條先生が襲われるところを。僕に教えて、分かることだけでもいい。一体何があったの？
勝手口に来たんです。
そうです。勝手口に誰かがやってきたんです。そして誰だろうと私は。
勝手口に誰か？それは誰？
最後まで言わせてやれ。それから
そいつは血まみれで大怪我を。私たちは使用人室に運び、すぐに南條先生が手当てをしました。そのとても深い。
だからそれは誰のこと？
わからない。確かに最初はそうだと思っていました。いや今でもわからない。
I mean, how many fingers deep is your chest? I feel like mine's like, if you take both hands, do that, I feel like that's roughly the depth of my chest. The manner that didn't match his large head, Goda held his head and scratched at it. I didn't have a clue whether he was confused because he couldn't remember, or whether he was confused because he'd seen something terrifying and couldn't accept it. Shannon looked the same way. She let her guard down, what she'd seen just a short while ago would quickly melt away like a daydream. She wouldn't be able to remember what she saw. That's what she looked like. Only Genji looked composed as usual. So, a couple of things to note from that experience. One, Canon never at any point in time here appeared alive. And two, Beatrice had declared with the red text that Canon had been killed. And that part never changed. So as long as someone so far is dead on the character list, we can consider them dead. So the questions were naturally directed at Genji. Even Genji had to take quite some time to gather his thoughts before he opened his mouth.
あなたは見たんでしょ？勝手口に来たのは誰？
はじめ、私たちはその人物がカノンであると知る。
ほら、やっぱり生きていたでしょ？私の推理は正しかった。
はじめはってことは、後にその認識は変わるってこと？
はい。その後に起こったことは、南條先生と熊沢を殺し、その時彼は間違いなくカノンではありません。
そうなんです。源氏さんの言う通り、口ではとても説明できない。
君も。
はい、私も同じことしか申し上げられません。
Oh, we passed 25,000 clicks. If we interpreted what they were saying favorably, it meant that Auntie Rose's conclusion had been correct from the beginning. Ken had appeared at the back door in the kitchen with a serious injury. Then he'd been taken up to the servants' room and cared for. And something terrifying had happened. Since these people couldn't imagine that Canon-kun could have pulled that off, they started to suspect whether that had really been Canon-kun. That how things are? In other words, this meant Canon-kun had appeared. No matter how confused they were, no matter how muddled their words, that's what it meant in the end. So Canon-kun indeed used some trick to escape the room that was locked. No, that doesn't matter anymore. The real problem is that Dr. Nanjo and Kumasawa were killed. Auntie Rosa had claimed that Canon was behind this from the very beginning. No matter how confused they became, no matter how much they tried to deny it, they were halfway saying that it was the truth. But even so, for some reason I felt like their awkwardness couldn't be explained just by confusion. What had they seen? Like they said, they had seen something unexplainable with words. Auntie Rosa, having decided that she wouldn't be able to get any more out of them, concluded her questioning. and said that she wanted to check the two bodies. I was also interested in that. Even if these people didn't have a clue what was going on in their confusion. If those of us who hadn't been at the scene calmly looked at the bodies, we might find something. It was a little surprising that Auntie Rosa was also concerned about the bodies just like I was. Even at this point, I still wanted to expose the culprit and the truth myself if we couldn't find any clues. But Auntie Rosa should have been different. Hadn't Auntie Rosa's plan given a higher priority to staying safe than finding the culprit? I couldn't really see why Auntie Rosa wanted to check the body so badly that she would deliberately leave her fort in the parlor.
みんなで一緒に使用人室に行きます。全員一緒に行動すれば安全よ。マリア、落書き遊びはおしまいにな。
おお、落書きじゃな。ベアトリーチェの問題を解いてるの。おお。
ベアトリーチェの何のことだよ。
ローザおばさん、マリアちゃんも連れて行くんですか。
It seemed that Georgiana had some resistance bringing Maria to the bloody crime scene. But taking into consideration the fact that Maria would be left alone here, it would surely be much safer if we took Maria with us. In the end, it wasn't just Anaki's irresponsible humanism. We decided that all of us, including Maria, would go to the servant room. I mean, she doesn't have to look inside, she can stay outside. Also, the servant room seems very far away. Was there not a closer room they could have dragged Cannon's corpse to? The bed in the servant room was stained with bright red blood. No, not just the bed. The whole room was covered with a gruesome paint from countless blood stains. That dreadful scene alone was enough to give us the idea of the repulsive sight that they had been trying to describe.
おお、マリアも見る。
マリアちゃんは僕と一緒にここで待ってよね。
George Aniki was standing by the entrance, covering Maria's eyes with his back to the room. He probably didn't want to dirty an innocent girl's retinas with the repulsive red in this room. That was surely the correct decision. I was acting tough right now, so I didn't mind, but I would probably remember this room and start to vomit whenever I saw red paint scattered around for the rest of my life. My retinas had already had this room burned into them. In other words, it was too late for me.
どこへ
Right after they entered the servants' room, Godo and Shannon-chan appeared flustered. We shook, wondering what horrible new situation had arisen to fluster them for a second time.
何事？
Auntie Rosa also shuddered, raising her gun high, in search for whatever it was that had them shaken. But she couldn't find it, which wasn't surprising. They were shaken because they couldn't find it.
なんだどうしたってんだ一体。
二人の遺体がありません。
どういうことなの？
そんなはずないんです。確かにお二人はここに。
おいおいおい、なんだよ。死体がどこかへ歩いてったってのか。そんなわけはないだろ。だってこの使用人室は施錠されてたんだろ。それを今ゴーダさんが開けて入ったわけじゃないか。ってことはなんだ、ジェシカの部屋と同じってことかよ。また密室の中から消えたってのかよ。そんなバカな。
私にも何のことやらさっぱり。私たちはこの部屋を出るとき確かに鍵をかけて、私こそ何が何やらもうわからないのです。
There was a timid and pitiful smile on Goda-san's face that he definitely wouldn't have let show normally. Shannon was the
二人
same.
の死体が消えた。しかも鍵をかけたのに消えた。仮にカノン君が犯人だとしても、カノン君はマスターキーをもう持ってないはず。
違います。カノン君は犯人じゃありません。
シャノン、僕はシャノンを信じるよ。カノン君は犯人なんかじゃない。きっとこれは彼によく似た何者かの仕業なんだ。
いえ、カノン君はマスターキーを手に入れられたわよ。だって彼のマスターキーはジェシカちゃんの遺体のポケットから見つかった。そして
そうだ、南條先生が。
That's right. Back then, it definitely been Dr. Nanjo who had searched through Jessica's clothes and found the master key. For someone had the opportunity to search Dr. Nanjo's corpse, it would have been easy for them to take the master key back. Auntie Rosa searched under the bed and in the locker, but now I also understood what that meant. I assumed there had been two culprits, it could be easily explained. The first person was Kanokun, or maybe an imposter that looked like him. He'd finished off Dr. Nanjo and ran off somewhere. The second person was probably the 19th person, Beatrice, whose location was unknown. She'd hidden under the bed in the servants' room beforehand, and with Dr. Nanjo's body still enshrined here, she'd waited for Genji-san and the rest to leave. After that, she'd crawled out, taken the master key back from Dr. Nanjo's pocket, and carried the two bodies away for some reason. She'd then locked the door with the master key. This locked room would be created.
ジェシカの部屋の推理を前提になかなか素早く組み立ててきたものよ。
Alright, but I think that is where we're going to call it for today, to give everyone a chance to develop their thoughts on this third room that we're going to experience.